This conference will now be recorded.
Till now, we have seen writing the code in the same main method inside. And now onwards, you don't need to use a main method. Then you can ask how it will recognize from where to start. Then this Junit and TestNG frameworks will help us. And Junit and TestNG are testing frameworks for Java. If you're using a Java programming language, you can use either JUnit or TestNG framework. Both are different. Both are not same. JUnit framework is different. TestNG framework are different. You can use these frameworks independently also. Without Selenium also you can use. You don't need a Selenium if you want to use these frameworks. If you have a Java programming language, then you can use these two frameworks. Write your test cases. Like developers will write JUnit test cases using JUnit framework. That's a JUnit. Like that, Selenium supports multiple programming languages, right? Each programming language, one unit testing framework is there. For Java, you have a JUnit and TestNG, right? Two frameworks. For Python, you have a PyTest unit framework. And for C#, you have a NUnit framework. For Ruby, you have a test unit framework. Like that, every programming language has its own unit framework, unit test case framework. So that's this framework. Now we are using Java, that's why JUnit framework we are discussing here. And JUnit is a unit testing framework mainly used for writing unit test cases. So unit test case, who will write? Developers, right? Developers will write the unit test cases. And that unit test cases, people used to write with this unit testing framework. That is JUnit. And JUnit latest version is Jupyter JUnit 5. JUnit 5 is the latest version. First it started with JUnit 3, then JUnit 4, now JUnit 5. JUnit 5 is the latest version now. And in this JUnit framework, I'm saying we are not going to use main method. Then what will be there? There are annotations. Annotations will be there. So annotation means what? It provides a metadata to the classes and methods, what info you need for these methods and classes that will be provided by annotation. So annotation starts with @ symbol and followed by annotation name. And that's all about annotation. And metadata means data about data. What data you need, the data will be provided. And these annotations, I'm giving both the JUnit 4 and JUnit 5 annotations so that you can get the difference between JUnit 4 and JUnit 5. And JUnit 4, we have @ before class, @ before, @ test, @ after, @ class, @ ignore, @ run with, @ suit. In JUnit 5, Jupyter JUnit, @ before class is renamed, not replaced, renamed @ before all. Functionality is same, how it behaves is same, but the name only changed. Instead of before class, they are calling in JUnit 5 @ before all. And @ before is renamed in the JUnit 5 as a @ before each. @ test and @ test in both versions. @ after is renamed as in JUnit 5 as @ after each. and at the rate after class is renamed as a at the rate after all, and at the rate ignored is renamed as a at the rate disabled. At the rate run with is same in both the versions. At the rate suit also same in both the versions. And these are the changes from JUnit 4 to JUnit 5. And what is these annotations? What they will do? That's important for us, right? Okay, renamed, fine. Is there any functionality change? No functionality change. Only name is changed, that's it. What is before class or before all means? Let's discuss one by one. This block of code will execute only once before executing any test method. Basically, any precondition code you can set up, you can write under this annotation method. Any precondition code. What is the precondition code for our test cases? Suppose I want to open a Amazon
Set
and
up
I want to set. What is the precondition for that this test case?
set properties for the executables
Okay, good.
and creating the browser driver.
That's it. That's a precondition, right? So if you want, first you need to launch the browser. That's a precondition code. Or somewhere, entire thing, some companies, you need to set up the build environment. Environment setting is the precondition for your test cases. That kind of code you can put in the before class. Any precondition code for your test cases, then you can write that precondition code under this before class or at that before all annotated method inside. First annotation name, below a Java static method, public static void method name. You give any method name. It's up to you what method name you want to give. Then it's a pure Java method, pure static Java method. And then below this method inside, all your precondition code you write. But this code will execute only once, first time only. When you enter into the class, first it will look for this annotation, and this annotation, then that block of code will execute. It doesn't matter where you are placing this inside the class. You place in the middle, you place in the bottom side, it doesn't matter. Mainly which one it will look for, this annotation. Exactly how to write a B should be capital, C should be capital, no space between that. And here also, at the rate symbol first should be there, then B should be capital and A should be capital, and no space between before and all. So you combine and write a symbol, then below that, and you can use any access modifier, but static method. Before all is a static method. Public static void method name, parenthesis, curly braces start. This code you can write like this. This is the first this block of code will execute wherever it is in the JUnit class. Is it clear? Next, at the rate before. This annotated method will be executed before every test method. Suppose some piece of code you want to execute multiple times every test method before. You have multiple at the rate test cases in your JUnit class. You can write multiple at the rate test cases, right? Valid test cases, negative test cases. You can write multiple test cases, right? Each test case, before you want to execute one code, the same line of code, it is important for the every test method before you want to execute. Instead of writing that line in every test methods, duplicating that repeatable code, what you can do, you put that inside the head before or before each. See that before each means this annotated method will be executed before each test method execution. At that test method execution, this before each will execute. Then it will go to at the test method. The cursor will go again at the test. After this before each is done, then it will go to at the test method. At the test means it's a pure test case. It represents the pure test case. We can write more than one @test annotations in the JUnit and TestNG classes. @test means multiple test cases you can write. Each @test annotation inside, you can write different test cases. So your test method name will be different, but annotation name should not change. You see that annotation name is same, @test. Only test method name will be different. Test2 here and test method name here given here. You can change the method name, but not annotation. Annotation names you should not change. As it is, you have to write. If you write a small case, then it won't understand by JUnit framework. And then a public void test2. Like that you will write. First, before each will execute, then it will come to first test, and immediately it will jump to after each, and it will go to first test case execution. After it will come to directly after each. After each means this annotated method will be executed after each test method. See that before each is before executing this test method, first before each will execute, then it will come to test method. After this execution, directly jump to after each block. Here it will come here. Any cleanup code you have, you can write that cleanup code. Then if one more test method is there, again controller goes to before each. First before each code will execute, then second test method code will execute. After second test method, again controller goes to after each. So the cycle will rotate on these three annotations. If you have multiple before @test methods are there, multiple @test methods are there, the cycle will rotate before each, @test, after each. One more @test is there, again controller goes to before each block, then second test, then after each. If no more test methods are there, finally it goes to after class or after all annotation. So this annotated method will be executed after all the test methods of the class are completed. So no more test methods are there. Then finally the cursor will come to after class or after all block. Then so you write the destroy code like closing the browser or taking the logs, something, some cleanup post action related steps you can write under after all. After all means only one time only to executes. So before class, after class, or before all, after all. That's a pair up. If you take before all, take after all also. Before all will set up the things. After all will clean up the things. Destroy the code. Destroy code you can write. So that means you're cleaning up the things. That's after all. And before is always for setting up something, and after is for cleaning up something. And @test means for test case purpose, pure test case purpose. So that's how we can so understand these annotations. So is it clear? And
Yes, sir.
ignore your test case execution temporarily. If you put this @ignore or @disable, you have to put in the latest JUnit 5, instead of ignore you have to put @disabled. That means this test case is not going to execute now currently. Currently this test case is not going to execute. That means it is going to skip. That test method is not going to execute. Wherever you keep @ignore or @disable on top of this @test. You want to skip the test case, you have to write this @ignore on top of that @test. So the execution order will be before class or before all first in your JUnit, then before each, then test method. Again it will go to after each. Again one more test method is there. Again it will go to before or before each, then second test method, then after each, then finally after class or after all will execute. This is the complete order of execution. They will ask you what is the order of execution in your JUnit annotations. Before class, before each, @test, @after each. Again before each, second @test, after each, then no more test cases. Then finally, after class or after all will execute. So after all is, so before all. Before all, opposite one is after all. Before is before each, after each. So this is the paired annotations. But all these annotations are not mandatory, optional. Only mandatory annotation is @test. So only @test you can use. You can write your test cases, not necessary all other. That's a @test means. And all other are optional. You don't need to take all other. Just write @test in Junit class, and you can run your test cases. You can run your Junit test case. But without @test, you cannot write your test cases. So then what are the features? Junit is an open source framework which is used for writing and running test cases and provides annotation to identify the test methods at the test method, and provides assertions for validating your results, your output, your data. You can validate expected and actual outputs. You can validate with the assertions. Till now we don't have, right? Validation we didn't do. So this one, assertions, will help us to validate that. Provide test runner for running your test cases. Inbuilt test runner is there in the Junit. It will run. We don't have any main method, right? This test runner is inbuilt. So when you right click on the class, run as a Junit test, it will run your test case. Junit test allows you to write code faster and very easily, and it's less complex, very simple one. And Junit test can be organized into test suites containing test cases, even other test suites. A test suite is nothing but a group of test cases, a collection of test classes. You can make as a test suite, and you can run as a bunch. So Junit test allows program status bar. So status bar you will get, if it is passed, green; if it is failed, red color it will show. Any test case fails, red color. All test cases are passed, green color it will show. So you can categorize or group the test cases using @category annotation that is replaced with the @tag annotation. @tag annotation you can use to group the test cases. So these are some of the features. Junit 5 adds a new set of assertion methods. We'll see that all this tomorrow. Junit 5 introduces assumptions so that stop a test from executing. And Junit 5 supports nested and dynamic test classes. So we can write all these Junit 5 features also. So this is the how to write test cases. Tomorrow I'll show you, and just go through this. And tomorrow I'll explain more about this